When this brother and sister were about to go on a date together, a hunter stopped them and instantly killed the boy. But for some reason, the boy regenerated and came back to life. The hunter was there to test their regenerative abilities. Because of this, he kept killing the two siblings over and over again. And every time they died and regenerated, the hunter got some experience points that helped him level up. This went on for a few years after he kidnapped them and locked them in the basement. He wasn't the only one taking out these siblings to level up. He created a guild with the 5 strongest hunters, and they all used these siblings to level up and become the strongest S-rank hunters in the country. Each hunter used a different method to level up, and some of the guys even went beyond just eliminating them. But the siblings belong to an immortal species and can regenerate endlessly. So they had to endure the pain of dying over and over again. One day, the hunters left the basement without locking them in their cage, thinking they were too weak to move and would only regenerate if they died. On that day, these hunters had to go somewhere far away for business, since they were the famous strongest hunters who defeated the S-rank demon. However, one of them stayed behind because he wanted to grind a few more levels using the siblings. Meanwhile, in the basement, the brother was still pinned to the floor. The girl's heart was shattered. Those guys had used every single part of her body. To try and cleanse herself, she figured that if she destroyed her own body and regenerated, maybe she would feel better. To free her brother, she sliced off the parts, pinning him to the ground. Then, needing to trigger his regeneration, she struck him right in the heart. Upon eliminating her brother, the girl leveled up. It was something she had never thought about. Those guys had been doing this for so long, and that's how they got so strong. Her eyes filled with pure malice. The two of them needed to get revenge, and even if it meant committing the exact same sin, she was going to do it. Her brother understood exactly what she meant and replied, "Do it now!" In that dark and freezing place, they killed each other thousands of times, almost reaching 1,000,000. Now they were on a whole other level. When the hunter arrived in the basement ready to play, he saw something terrifying. The two of them were evolving together. He screamed that only he was allowed to do that. And in the blink of an eye, when the siblings regenerated, their bodies were powerful now. That look of defenseless weaklings was gone. Now they were like fierce wolves ready to attack. He even fell backwards in fear, but then he remembered he was an S-rank, the pride of the country. So he unleashed his magical beast to fight. The boy had seen this before and was confident. He pushed his sister to the side and told her to watch how they had changed. His posture was now as cold as ice. Not even the fierce glare of a dragon could intimidate him anymore. Even though the girl was stronger now, she was still scared after everything they had done to her, so her brother protected her like a knight. The fight between an S-rank and a newly evolved immortal was brutal. Strength and combat experience just weren't enough. When the boy completely drained the S-rank's energy, he said, "You need to pay in the worst way possible." Many hours went by. The brother destroyed and regenerated the S-rank's body dozens of times to make him feel what they had felt for years. When the other hunters came back, they saw a guild member tied to the basement ceiling, with his body completely destroyed. He was alive, but not even healing magic could save him. The leader of the hunters then put his friend out of his misery and sliced him in two. Chikara was furious, but Haruto just explained that they couldn't save him, and it was done to end his suffering. Now, the priority was to get revenge and make those two pay for this injustice. Meanwhile, Shin and Minori are fleeing through the forest at night, until the younger sister can't run anymore, feeling an intense pain in her legs. The two decide to rest for a bit, and the reality that they've finally escaped begins to sink in. Shin gently strokes Minori's hair. After surviving that hell, he promises to protect her. Suddenly, the girl falls asleep in her brother's lap, who knows she is exhausted. He decides to stay awake and alert, as he doesn't know when the guild will come after them. However, sleep begins to overcome him, and he fights to stay awake, knowing he can't fall asleep. Suddenly, Shin notices two people running in the forest and jolts awake with a surge of adrenaline. He feels the unmistakable presence of malice, the same as those who tortured him for years. Believing Minori will be safe there, he takes off at high speed after the aggressors. He follows the source of that malice until he reaches a house in the middle of the forest, figuring they will soon notice his presence. Suddenly, a man emerges from the shadows behind him and stabs him in the neck. A group of strange people appears from between the branches surrounding him. He wonders who these men are, as he has never seen them before. The attackers surround him on all sides, leaving him cornered. They know he is the man they were looking for, but they remember there was also a woman. 500 million just to kidnap one person. In their minds, it was going to be an easy job. The group's mage casts a strength spell on her colleagues, empowering them. Excited by his newfound power, the first of them strikes Shin, thinking the task is too easy as he sees the young man fall to the ground, his bones apparently broken. Then, Shin simply snaps his neck bone back into place, leaving everyone in shock as they know he should already be dead. He asks if they are subordinates of the guild, but seeing they don't answer, he decides it doesn't matter who they are. Suddenly, he vanishes and reappears to attack from the flanks, hitting one of the enemies by surprise with a punch to the gut. To him, anyone who directs malice his way, no matter who they are, becomes his enemy. Two men advance and manage to tear off his arm. Shin, however, grabs his own severed limb and throws it, landing a punch on the target's face. As he takes one down, his arm regenerates, and he immediately prepares an attack on another enemy, delivering a powerful punch with the newly formed arm. After taking down the three of them, he notices that only the mage with the staff is left. She is visibly frightened by his strength and casts a spell called Purple Light, hitting him squarely. No matter how strong he is, he can't avoid the impact of the magic beam. However, to her surprise, Shin gets up right after, without a single scratch. In shock at his regeneration, the mage begins to cast more spells, firing more purple beams at him, but he just keeps getting up, unfazed by the damage. The moment she tries to flee, he doesn't let her. Shin goes after her, and after hanging all the enemies in the trees, he steals the clothes from one of them. He decided to spare their lives and then returns to take care of his sister. He apologizes for waking her. Minori asks where he got those clothes. Shin lies, saying a kind person gave them to him, and his sister is happy. He also brought clothes for her, and she gets very excited. Now that they've changed their clothes, they decide to continue on down the dirt road. The immortal siblings continue their journey toward freedom. Shin believed that if they went a little further, the guild wouldn't be able to find them. They decided to rest beneath a waterfall and made a fire behind the falling water. He had brought food for them both, and they were able to regain their strength. The mercenaries had been carrying weapons and emergency rations, which he had taken. However, they didn't have any useful information on them. Shin told his sister he was going to the tower to gather information and get some basic supplies, asking Minori to hide well. When he arrived in the city, he was amazed by how technological everything was. He sold a piece of equipment that fetched a large sum of money, allowing him to buy plenty of supplies. With the money he earned, he could finally feed his sister. He wondered what to do next. After all, Abe had been the weakest of them, and the others were far more monstrous. He needed to find their weaknesses to ensure he could drag them all to hell. In the sky, he saw an airship broadcasting the news that the S-rank hunter, Abe Taru, had died. Kira was speaking live, saying that his friend, who had always helped them, had been brutally tortured and murdered. He declared they would never forgive those who took his life. He then showed the faces of Kiryu, Shin, and Minori on the broadcast to incite public outrage. Now he understood. The enemies from before had been hired to kidnap them. During the broadcast, Haruto addressed Shin directly, saying he would face the consequences and that it was useless to hide because they would find him. The news caused a massive uproar among the population, who now wanted to see the two siblings eliminated to avenge Abe. They would not forgive the criminals who had killed their hero. Shin realized Kira was hiding his own crimes and felt a duty to drag him down to the underworld. The scene shifted to the past, a few days before the Kiryu siblings had managed to escape. Chikara was punching a man for failing to bring back any decent information, calling him useless. Aya said they had already leveled up enough and no longer needed it. Seiya was deeply concerned that what they had done to the Kiryu siblings would be exposed. Haruto calmed him down, saying he would make the world see them as heinous criminals to prevent that from happening. He knew no one would believe the words of fugitives with a 500 million bounty on their heads. Kongu interpreted this as a plan to let them get away alive after what they had done to Taru. Outraged, he said he couldn't forgive them for torturing his comrade, Abe. He wanted to make sure he captured them both and showed them a hell they had never seen before. Aya understood how he felt, but remarked that Taru was the weakest among them, which was why he had been targeted. Enraged, Kongu tried to punch the mage for speaking ill of their fallen comrade, but magical restraints materialized to hold back his strike. The mage who had cast the spell told him to calm down, as she didn't believe the siblings posed a real threat to them. For Kongu, however, it was a matter of vengeance, not fear. The argument ended when Kira interrupted them. There was a message written in Taru's vital fluid. It said they would eliminate them all, which meant the siblings still saw them as targets. Haruto told everyone not to panic, as he knew the Curious would show up soon. The world was on their side, since their names, faces, and the bounty had been made public. Information about the two was bound to surface soon. When Kongu tried to argue, Haruto said that panicking wouldn't help, as they were world-renowned heroes. They needed to prepare to face the Hell Lords, and would rest for now since they were all exhausted. Chikara, however, couldn't rest with so much resentment boiling inside him. He was determined to find the two of them and wipe them out. Meanwhile, at the waterfall, the two siblings were together. Minori had slept very well there, as illusion magic had allowed her to sleep peacefully, unaware of any threats. After resting, they knew it was time to leave, as it was dangerous to stay in one place for too long. He warned Minori that they were now criminals, their faces known in every city and that they needed to be careful. So he came up with the idea of wearing masks to hide their faces, even if it slightly obstructed their vision. The Kiryu siblings put on the masks and noted that they worked well, even if they were to encounter enemies. As they were leaving, Minori asked Shin if they had a destination, and her brother confirmed he had prepared one. They were going to a dungeon, a realm separate from the real world and hidden behind a gate, where the laws of the common world did not apply. It was a place where normal people were not allowed to enter. The dungeon's terrain was difficult to traverse, but at the same time, perfect for hiding. According to the guide he bought in the city, there was a poison swamp at the top of the mountain. Being a dangerous area, hunters would rarely go there to look for them, making it the perfect base. Soon they found the region's mystical gate. No matter what happened, they would stick together. Holding each other's hands, they jumped into the portal. Upon arriving, they were surprised to see that the swamp truly looked poisonous. Even though it was a place no one else could enter due to the poison, they decided not to let their guard down. After all, a hunter could use a poison immunity potion and try to capture them. At that moment, he stepped on a plant trap that pierced his brain. He immediately warned his sister that if she stepped on the vines, seeds would be shot out, as the place was full of traps. As soon as she understood they couldn't relax, she pointed to something just ahead. Seeing a giant white wolf and a giant black wolf, the siblings stood in shock. He told his sister not to worry about the monsters, as he would take care of it. He ran toward the creatures and jumped high to get on the wolves' backs, delivering a punch of overwhelming force that easily shattered the black wolf. However, the white wolf then devoured half of his body. Minori was frozen, but he regenerated quickly, though he was frightened. Being a dungeon monster, the creature's speed and strength were on another level, even stronger than Abe Teru and his chimera. Minori cast a spell to protect her brother. It was an enchantment that made his severed arms and legs move on their own to attack the monster. The two severed hands forced the wolf's mouth open, revealing its teeth. As soon as its mouth was wide open, he charged toward the creature, managing to pierce through it and end the fight. Exhausted, he was panting and sweating heavily, making his sister worry. Although he had finished the fight successfully, he was visibly tired. He believed the ability he used to defeat the wolf had only manifested because of Minori's spell. Seeing red lightning coursing through his body, he commented on how useful it was, as it had helped him win. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a month after the siblings' escape, Kongu picked up a giant stone while his subordinates fought monsters. He hurled the rock with maximum force, defeating the blue wyverns. He then charged at another one and began to brutally rip off its wing, leveling up in the process. As expected of Kongu, he took down the wyverns with extreme ease. Later, in a cave, while eating, Kongu asked where the siblings were. His men told him not to rush, as rumors said all hunters were desperately searching for them because of the bounty. One of the subordinates then said something more important. He had heard from a friend that the boy now wore a mask. A few days ago, this friend, who went to clear the poison dungeon, saw Kiryu Shin defeat a poison snake with his bare hands. A poison snake is an A-rank monster whose venom can take down an elephant. None of them could imagine a human being taking down such a creature. To Chikara, it was strange that such a strong warrior existed whom he didn't know about. The fact that someone had defeated an A-rank snake barehanded made him eager to meet this masked man. The subordinate stated that the event had occurred 3 days ago and that the boy must still be in the dungeon. Knowing it was a restricted and dangerous area, one of the men tried to argue with Kongu, but the consequence was a punch. He then declared that they would go to the poison swamp immediately. Chikara was excited to find the masked man. Back in the dungeon, the protagonist senses something. Startled, he climbs a tree to watch the portal, feeling a presence draw near. He's certain it's Kongu. When he says he's going out to meet him, Minori begs him to stay. Our hero, however, tells her to calm down, explaining that they are stronger now too. This was the perfect chance to get their revenge on the brute. He tells his sister not to look so worried, assuring her everything will be fine since he can't die. Still, Minori urges him to be careful, pointing out that despite his immortality, Kongu is stronger than Abe. She then uses her enchantment to boost her brother's strength, and he dashes off. He moves stealthily through the trees, activating a spell to expand his field of vision. He finally locates his target, Kongu. He's near the swamp's entrance, clearly waiting for him to come closer. Spotting a poisonous boar nearby, the protagonist decides to use it for his trap. He cuts his own finger with a knife and casts an illusion and hypnosis spell on the creature. He then commands the boar to run toward a horde of other poisonous boars, luring them into his trap. Upon seeing the herd of boars rushing toward them, Kongu and his lackeys consider it a perfect warm-up. He orders his men to stop trembling and attack the creatures. While crushing the animals with ease, Kongu shouts for more to come, finding the fight far too simple. After defeating the entire herd, he remarks on how easy it was. However, his lackeys plead for arrest, but Chikara refuses to listen. One of his men complains of extreme exhaustion and shortness of breath before he starts vomiting blood. Soon, his skin and that of the others begins to melt, and they all cough up large amounts of blood. Kongu smells poison in the air and finally understands why his men are succumbing. He knows poisonous boars don't release that kind of toxin when killed. He wonders what's going on, and just then, the protagonist emerges from behind him. He strikes, but Kongu defends the blow effortlessly. Turning around, Kongu sees the masked man and realizes the rumors about him were true. The hero then lunges forward and manages to slice Chikara's hand with his knife. Even with the blade embedded in his hand, he retaliates with a powerful punch. The protagonist is sent flying backward, feeling the force of the impact and the wind generated by the strike. Kongu's movements and resilience confirm every rumor about his strength. Kongu rips the knife out of his hand and declares that he's taken a liking to the masked man. He explains that he admires strong men and is disgusted by the weak. His lackeys died because they were weak. Convinced of the masked man's strength, he invites him to join his group. If he were to become his subordinate under the banner of Byakuren, he would gain money, honor, and women. All of it would be his. Kongu then asks if the offer sounds appealing. He repeats what he said before, about adoring the strong and hating the weak. He thought the men he brought to the swamp had potential, but he was mistaken. They annoyed him to no end, and now he regrets not using them as punching bags to train on. The protagonist remembers the torture he endured and asks why he torments the weak. Chikara replies that he simply finds it amusing. He describes how when he punches the weak, their reactions are always the same. They start apologizing. They all say the same things, and seeing their faces twisted in fear makes him laugh. Their desperate expressions entertain him to no end. Hearing this, the hero becomes enraged and rushes in, landing a punch on his face. Kongo believes that as men, they are meant to fight, and he praises the protagonist's punch. Immediately after, he winds up for a powerful blow, but Shin manages to dodge to the side. In the next moment, Shin grabs his dagger and stabs the villain's arm. It wasn't part of Kongu's plan to let him leave alive, but he acknowledges that his opponent is very strong. Shin was already certain that Chikara was a monster, and this was confirmed once more as he watched him prepare a brutal punch, his face overflowing with hatred. The explosive, bone-shattering blow lands squarely on Shin, sending him flying. After being sent flying, Shin felt that was the heaviest blow he had ever received in his life. He believed he had just felt the peak of Kongu's power. Kongu approached and asked if he had withstood the impact. To his surprise, Kongu claimed he had been holding back, using only 30% of his full strength. The revelation left Shin in shock, unable to believe that wasn't a full power blow. His enemy encouraged him to use everything he had, including his weapons. He declared he would withstand any attack the masked man threw at him, just to prove who was stronger. Shin lunged forward with his knife and slashed, but the blade shattered against Kongu's body. Kongu said that at his full strength, a dull knife like that wouldn't even leave a scratch. He stated that Shin must have understood the power gap between them by now, and that he couldn't win like this. Shin, however, responded with a flurry of punches. Chikara remarked that he was the first to challenge him like this, even after witnessing his power. This made the villain like the masked man even more, and he responded with a powerful kick, the impact sending the protagonist flying once again. Excited, he threw the boy to the ground. However, he was disappointed, as he had placed high hopes in Shin, and now believed him to be dead. But then, Kongu noticed a pool of poison on the ground, and a moment later, a knife was thrown into his shoulder. He found it impossible that Shin's skin was intact, even after sinking into the pool of poison, and called him inhuman, though he still couldn't remember who he was. Suddenly, Chikara seemed to recall something and charged at the masked man with everything he had, trying to grab our hero, who dodged the blows. Kongu then charged a punch with magic and slammed it into the ground. The blow shattered the entire area, causing an explosion that swept Shin away. The attack left a large crater, and the impact knocked his mask to the ground. Upon seeing the revealed face, Chikara's reaction was to laugh hysterically, realizing it had been the immortal all along. He said he had been looking for Kiryu Makoto Shin all this time, and had finally found him. Chikara couldn't believe the masked man was him, and realized that Shin had only withstood the attacks because of his regeneration. He exclaimed that he had been searching for him for a long time to avenge Taru's death. With this revelation, he changed his mind about making Shin an ally. Filled with hatred, he declared that he would eliminate him. The protagonist, in turn, replied that this wouldn't satisfy him, as he would do far more than just eliminate Kongu Chikara. The two faced off, and the brute charged forward again. He hurled rocks in the protagonist's direction, and one came with such speed that it tore off his arm. Immediately after, Kongu prepared prepared an overhead kick, and as the blow landed, he yelled that he wouldn't let the immortal escape this time. The kick shattered the ground even more, widening the crater. However, our hero was unfazed and dashed toward Chikara with great speed, appearing in front of him and landing a punch to his face. Kongu barely moved from the punch and reacted, asking if that was all he could do. To demonstrate what a real punch was, he delivered a brutal blow to Shin's face that sent him flying into a rock, coughing up a large amount of blood. He noticed the immortal was trembling after his devastating blow. Kongu laughed boisterously, as fear was clearly visible in the boy's body. Our hero was terrified and started running as he looked at his enemy's malicious expression, who knew he had remembered the fear he felt while being tortured. Makoto ran desperately while the giant followed him, walking slowly. The immortal screamed, and his severed arm, which was on the ground, flew toward its target. Without even looking, the villain destroyed the arm and the magic, sensing that Shin was trying a trick. Arrogantly, the enemy said he wouldn't be defeated by something so trivial. Immediately after, he landed another powerful kick to the boy's stomach with an air of superiority. Then he stepped on his head and asked how the boy had gotten so strong in such a short time. He warned that he would keep hitting him until he answered his question. From the boy's expression, Kongu realized his sister must be nearby, and said that after finishing Shin, he would go after Minori to destroy her too, wanting to see if she would entertain him as much as Makoto was. Our protagonist was furious, but he couldn't move as he took kicks to the head. Finally, the giant stomped down, crushing his head, planning to tie him up before he could regenerate. However, in an instant, the protagonist vanished from the ground and reappeared behind Kongu. Red and black lightning crackled around his body. His regeneration was faster than before. Shin vanishes in the blink of an eye and reappears in front of his enemy, preparing a punch. A shockwave erupts from the impact of their two fists, expelling a massive amount of energy. Kongu notices the boy has gotten faster, but judges him to be powerless, thinking he's completely overwhelmed. He unleashes more punches than Shin can handle and asks if his regeneration is failing to keep up. Kongu lands a punch on the boy's arm, making it explode, and Shin reacts with a look of sharp pain. The villain wonders how much longer Shin's weak defense can hold out. After that, another kick is thrown at the protagonist, who loses another arm. Chikara says he's just regenerating and defending without thinking, calling him incompetent. Seeing Shin crack a small smile, he asks why. The protagonist answers that he just thought of something. He's glad Kongu is a brainless idiot. Shin notices that all of his severed limbs are imbued with that red and black energy. Our protagonist then commands all these parts of his body to move. His severed limbs begin to attack the villain, who says he isn't affected by such weak blows. He defends and counterattacks all the fists, but is surprised by their strength. He finds it odd, as the boy was trembling with fear just a short while ago. Our hero is still afraid, yet something is growing inside his body, something strong enough for him to channel all his hatred into his attacks. He charges a powerful punch with his remaining arm, which is enveloped by magical lightning. As he lands the punch, he manages to blow his enemy's arm to pieces, leaving him in shock. Shin challenges him, daring him and Kongu to a contest of strength. This enrages his enemy, who screams that he will turn the immortal into a punching bag. Kongu charges at him like a bull, vowing that he will never regenerate again, as he will be torn to pieces. Our protagonist then commands all the severed arms to gather into one. He thus creates a giant arm and uses it to deliver the strongest punch of his life. As the giant arm's punch connects, the enemy is sent flying from the incredible impact. Shin asks Chikara how it feels to lose in a contest of strength. He says that all the hatred and fear the brothers felt will be carved deep into the villain's body. A week after the battle with Kongu, we see the guild heroes at their base. Kira asks Seiya if the preparations for facing the next demon lord are going well. Seiya replies that they are, and that they must work hard for Abe Taro's sake. For a moment, Haruto seems to forget Taru's existence. Seiya finds this strange. After a moment, Kira says he was just joking, and that he remembers Abe. After that awkward moment, Seiya mentions he hasn't seen Chikara around. Kira says he's looking for the brothers and comments that the two of them served as good punching bags during that time. He tells the swordsman not to worry, saying Chikara will bring the brothers back soon. The attitude of the two leaves Seiya feeling uneasy, and he thinks that when the brothers return, he will train them to death. Just then, an employee arrives in a hurry to give the heroes some news. He claims a package was just delivered, but that it's no ordinary delivery. Seiya and Kira run to see the contents, very worried. Aya says they can see for themselves what's wrong. That's when Seiya notices parts of Kongu's body, recognizable by the tattoo. Everyone is certain it's Chikara's arm, and they become deeply concerned. Aya casts a spell and confirms it's not a fake. They are his real body parts. Seiya reacts badly, and she wonders who could have possibly eliminated the big guy. Aya observes the cruel cuts and the fact that the body parts were sent to them, concluding it must have been someone with a deep grudge. Since Chikara was looking for the brothers, they assume the boys are responsible for this. Seiya can't believe those two had the power to defeat the brute. Kira says he already had his doubts when Taru was taken down, as he was the weakest of them all. However, Taru was still stronger than most hunters. And now, Chikara, one of the strongest in the world, has been defeated. Kira is certain the brothers are much stronger than they should be. Outraged, the swordsman can't believe they became strong enough to eliminate Kongu in such a short time. Haruto then asks how they got so strong so quickly. Seiya explains that they did it by killing each other hundreds of times to level up. Kira adds that by defeating a higher level enemy, you gain a lot of experience points. The brothers probably killed each other over and over to level up quickly, becoming strong enough to get their revenge on the Byakuren guild. This revelation leaves Aya and Seiya frightened, but they try to remain calm. Even while feeling bad for Chikara, they need to think about what to do next. Aya casts a spell to stabilize Seiya's mind, telling him he needs to rest. He thanks her and leaves the room, while Haruto asks the mage to leave him alone for a moment. When she leaves, Haruto picks up the severed arm of his former colleague, not feeling the least bit intimidated. Sending a piece of trash like this to confront him doesn't even make him afraid. If they think they'll get their revenge with just this, they are sorely mistaken. Still, the fact that they came up with a plan to defeat Kongu was impressive. Stepping on his former comrade's eye, he calls the brothers idiots. However, the eye belonged to Makoto Shin, who had been watching everything through it. Now that it's been destroyed, he loses the connection and decides he needs to gather more information from the enemy base. He's worried about Minori and is going back to take care of her. After all, the girl was waiting for him in front of the guild's base. Sending the package was a good excuse to go shopping in the city, since the food in the dungeon wasn't the best. Besides, his clothes are enchanted with something like a body memory spell. Even if they get torn or dirty, they repair themselves, which is quite useful. He brings a few souvenirs for Minori, who is waiting alone for his return. As he heads back to the dungeon, leaping over buildings, he notices something strange. Armed hunters chasing someone. The hero stops in his tracks and sees that the person being chased is a young woman. He thinks it's best not to get involved, since that area is controlled by Byakuren. Just then, the hunters surround the woman, thinking they've caught her. Seeing that the girl is no longer running, the protagonist realizes he can't just ignore the aggressors. He jumps down from the building and rushes the hunters, landing powerful punches on both of them before they can say a word. Knowing there must be a reason the girl was being chased, he tells her to run and get away, recognizing her in the process and wondering what she was doing there. While all this is happening, Minori waits for her brother's return, sitting on a tree branch. He finally returns and his sister asks what's wrong, noticing the hooded girl he's carrying in his arms. When she asks who the girl is, the protagonist tells her to calm down and look at the person's face. Minori looks shocked to see that the person is herself. They both have the same face. Ishiki Seiya is the proud commander of the Byakuren Guild and the world's best swordsman, an S rank. With his gentle gaze, he is highly popular and adored by women. His friendly nature and good humor win everyone over. However, few people know his true, wicked nature. One day, while he was in a hot tub with several girls, one of them accidentally spilled wine into the water. Seiya became enraged and eliminated the girl for this trivial reason. In the past, upon seeing Minori in chains, he had called her the best. Unlike other women, no matter how much he broke her, she couldn't die. He proved his point by cutting her with his holy sword, reveling in her panicked screams. To him, torturing women was the greatest pleasure in the world, and Shin grew irritated that he always targeted Minori. To shut his older brother up, Seiya shoved his sword into his mouth. Seiya found torturing men to be dull and preferred to attack and play with women. He violated her in front of his brother, telling her to scream louder. After finishing his perverse act, he went to the base's elevator and saw Kira and Taru talking. He watched the two of them enter a room that was supposed to be restricted to everyone except Haruto. Seiya tried to peek from behind the door, but Kira noticed him and told him not to. The swordsman apologized, saying he was just curious when he saw them going into the room together. Kira said he was just throwing something away and asked if Seiya wanted to take a look. Curious, the swordsman entered the room and was met with the sight of several tubes containing clones of Minori. Haruto explained that he had asked him to create several clones of Minori Kiryu. The idea was to mass produce them, using Niyu's power, so that he could level up even faster. They used Byakuren's resources and Teru's technology to create the clones, but the plan didn't work. Their regeneration ability was incomplete. After being eliminated 10 times, a clone would no longer regenerate. Furthermore, they didn't grant any experience points when defeated. Even after trying to improve them, them. Taru found the task too difficult and ultimately useless, so they decided to get rid of them all. Seiya asked if they were really throwing them all away. Taru replied that there was a little trick. He intended to use the clones as much as possible before discarding them, but confessed that he wasn't satisfied, as they weren't real. In a perverse manner, the world's greatest swordsman asked them to give him the clones. Taru argued that they were useless, as they possessed no emotions or self-awareness. They were just effective dolls that followed orders, which Seiya considered perfect. Abe found it strange that he was so excited about the dolls, but Seiya explained that he didn't understand. It wasn't about liking dolls, but about Minori Kiryu. He loved her, and wanted to use them and play with them in every perverse way imaginable. In his manipulative mind, all rights to her belonged to him. Kira commented that he wasn't obsessed with her, but dependent. Haruto in turn called Seiya the worst kind of scum imaginable. Back in the present, the clone and the real Minori met, both in a state of shock. Seeing the scene, our protagonist asked if his sister was okay. The clone revealed that there were still a dozen other Minoris being used by Ishiki. She explained that although they were supposed to be devoid of emotions, the truth was that they had feelings. The clone couldn't explain it exactly, but everything changed when, by chance, she saw the real Minori's face on TV. Something warm was born inside her. At the same time, she realized the hatred and resentment she felt were all directed at Ishiki Seiya. As soon as she understood this emotion, she escaped from the mansion. She told them that there were others like her in the mansion and asked for help to save them. The protagonist then had an idea, to use the clones to eliminate Seiya. The girl didn't understand how, and he explained that since Ishiki didn't know the clones had emotions, he would surely let his guard down around them. They could use this strategy to take him down. Minori, however, asked what would happen if he discovered the plan. When he replied that, in the worst-case scenario they would all be eliminated, his sister became furious. She slapped Shin Makoto across the face, arguing that those girls didn't ask to be born, and now that they were alive, they shouldn't be used as tools and abandoned to die. Those girls were created from her cells and were like her sisters. If her sisters were crying for help, it was only natural that she would want to save them. She questioned him, asking if sacrificing all of them to achieve a goal was really the perfect chance to get revenge on Seiya. Our hero felt a weight on his conscience, realizing that this would make him just like the monsters from Byakuren. The clone then declared that they would save all the others. To redeem himself, the protagonist said he would eliminate Ishiki Seiya with his own hands for treating her sisters like trash. He apologized for scaring his sister and said they would go to the mansion together to save them all. And so, the two siblings went through the portal and, emerging from the forest, headed toward the mansion. Meanwhile, Seiya was punishing one of the clones, furious that another like her, supposedly mindless, had escaped. He penalized the others for failing to stop her flight. He then ordered them to hunt down the fugitive and bring her back, an order they obeyed promptly. Minori's clones ran through the city streets chasing a hooded figure. The pursuit continued until the hooded girl stumbled over a box, losing her speed. Immediately, the clones seized the opportunity to lung at her, pinning her to the ground. They signaled that they had found and captured the target and were returning. From the top of a building, the protagonist and his sister watched the entire capture. He remarked that, as expected, they had followed her after the staged escape. The plan was in motion. The protagonist handed one of his ears to his sister, Minori, while she marked an X on her face to serve as bait. With his body manipulation ability, he could hear everything happening inside the mansion through the ear. If anything went wrong, he would appear instantly to protect her. Arriving at Ishiki's mansion, which was much larger than he had imagined, the clones knocked on the door and announced the capture of the supposed fugitive. Seiya demanded to know why number 10 had run away. Feigning submission, Minori apologized and claimed she had chased a mysterious shadow, but had already dealt with it, and there would be no more trouble. He warned her that if she acted on her own again, she would be discarded. At that moment, Haruto called Seiya for a remote meeting and ordered him to get rid of her before he returned. The clones obeyed, and our hero heard everything through his spell. The girls took Minori to the place where she was to be eliminated. In the center of the room lay several bodies of other clones, and the girl was terrified by the sight. While the others cleaned the area and disposed of the corpses, Minori began to cry, finding it all incredibly cruel and horrific. Clone number 10 then told number 3 to flee with her to avoid such a tragic end. The other, however, asked why they would do that, since serving the master was their duty. Minori tried to coordinate an escape with all of them, asking if they understood what they were doing. They replied they were merely disposing of bodies. She insisted they would never be happy if they stayed there, trying to wake them up to reality. However, the girls asked what happiness was, stating they were slaves who only served the master, with no need for thoughts or wills of their own. They existed only to be used, punished, and to offer their bodies as ordered. Hearing the clones' thoughts that they were mere objects, the protagonist grew enraged at that maggot Seiya. Insisting that this was wrong, Minori shouted that she knew herself better than anyone and hugged her counterparts. She knew they had suffered greatly and that everything had been unbearable and painful. The clone being hugged asked to be released, but Minori did not let go, asserting that they had their own will and self-awareness. They simply didn't know how to express it. She proclaimed she would save them from that situation. Number 3 didn't understand, but she felt something stir within her. At that moment, Ishiki Seiya kicked the door open, interrupting them. Declaring he had not given the girl permission to speak, he angrily punished them with slaps to the face. He concluded that number 10 was defective and needed to be discarded. The scene triggered Minori's memories of the torture she endured while imprisoned at the Byakuren base. Seiya drew his sword, noting the look of hatred on the girl's face. Suddenly, one of them told the master to stop. He punished number 3 for trying to give orders, striking her with the hilt of his sword. Seeing them all gaining consciousness, he grew tired of it and decided to eliminate them all at once. As he swung his blade toward number 3, the original Minori stepped in front of her. When Ishiki noticed she had protected her counterpart, he was shocked by the act. However, as he smelled and tasted her vital fluid, he recognized it as familiar. The girl tried to attack him, but he was faster and drove his sword into Minori's chest. Only then did he realize it was the real Kiryu Minori, and the protagonist heard everything through the spell. After his sister is discovered by the villain, Shin embarks on his rescue mission. Moving at high speed, he invades Ishiki's mansion. The alarm sounds, and the enemy realizes that Minori's brother has come to save her, declaring that Shin will face hell, as his mansion is guarded by countless armed clones. They are trained combat clones, and they all look like Shin's younger sister. The villain expresses curiosity to see how far he can go, while the protagonist dodges every attack. The clones try to strike him with spears, but our hero evades each blow, until a surprise attack lands, and his arm is decapitated as usual. Unexpectedly, clone number 10 appears to help him, pushing away the warrior who attacked him. The other clone asks what number 10 is doing, and she explains that Shin is the original older brother of them all. In response, the warrior states that she doesn't care, as the master's order is to eliminate all intruders without exception. For protecting an invader, number 10 has also become a target and is now considered an enemy. The clones prepare to eliminate her, but just then, Shin recovers and grabs his mask. As he places it on his face, an immense energy begins to swirl around him, and he tells clone number 10 to let him handle everything. Elsewhere, Seiya slashes Minori's face and laughs as she cries out in pain. He grabs her hair, smelling it and delighting in the scent. Moved by excitement, he throws a punch that sends her flying, thanking them for eliminating Chikara and Taru, as he was getting annoyed with both of them. Seiya questions why she returned after managing to escape his grasp, asking if she came back to be his again. Just then, he kicks her in the face. Filled with hatred for how he toyed with her and her clones, Minori gets up, grabs a dagger, and exclaims that she will never forgive him. Seiya mockingly asks if she wants revenge for being tortured by him all these years, noting that she even changed her path to try and rescue the clones. To prove his point, he grabs clone number 3 and decapitates her in front of Minori. In shock, she screams in panic and tries to wound him with her small dagger, but he, an expert swordsman, doesn't get a single scratch. To demonstrate his superiority, he tears off Minori's arms with his sacred blue sword and then kicks her away. He argues that the clones are not living beings and that he just plays with them until they break. To prove his words, he eliminates another one right after. Our heroine tries to save the fallen clone and glares at him with a look of pure hatred, which is exactly what Ishiki wants, for her eyes to fill with pure despair. The moment Minori steps in front of another clone to protect her, he attacks again with his sword. As her arms are severed once more, she casts a spell, screaming for the villain not to move. Seiya, however, states that she doesn't understand the situation. Those she desperately tries to protect are nothing but useless, disposable dolls. Seeing her desperation to save her kind, he laughs and says she must ask properly. He orders Minori to put her head on the ground. When she glares at him with hatred and refuses, he plunges his sword into another clone's stomach, asking if she really doesn't want to save them. Then, filled with fury, he screams for her to obey. He warns her that if she refuses to kneel, he will continue to eliminate her kin, and proves his point by throwing small daggers at the clones, taking them down one by one. Finally, the girl drops to her knees and begs him to stop. Taking out another clone, he asks if stop is the only thing she can demand. Pressing her forehead to the floor, she begs him to stop tormenting the clones. He says he will only reconsider if she takes the place of his useless dolls. Pointing his sword at her, he orders her to lick his boot, stating that she has no right to refuse. He pricks her with the blade and tells her that in his presence she can only answer with "yes, sir." Intimidated, Minori finally yields and answers that she will. He then opens a door, keeping his sword close to her at all times. Coldly and sadistically, he rips out her tongue in a single motion. He then takes the severed tongue, puts it in his mouth, chews and swallows it, commenting on how delicious it tastes. He then grabs her by the neck, declaring she won't escape, and begins to tear at her clothes. Pointing the sword at her neck again, he demands she show him more of that panicked expression, telling her to fight, to resist, and in the end, to submit to him. Just as he is about to commit the act, Seiya takes a brutal punch to the face. Our protagonist, Shin, appears and delivers the extremely powerful blow. After striking the enemy, he rushes to his sister to check on her. The look on her face shows she knew her brother would come. Meanwhile, Ishiki gets up, filled with rage, and asks what he did to the clones in the mansion. Shin replies that he would never eliminate the clones, as they are made from his sister. It was difficult, but he managed to incapacitate all of them. Seiya finds his attitude boring and says he would have done something better with the dolls, like capturing them and violating them in front of their brother over and over again. Our hero retorts that what will be more interesting is when he crushes him 1,000,000 times over. Shin throws another punch, but Seiya blocks it with his sword, and only the impact hits him. The villain understands how he managed to neutralize the clones with such strength. Immediately after, he hurls him away and uses a sword technique imbued with lightning magic. This blow tears off one of Shin's limbs. However, the severed arm is enveloped by mind control magic and flies toward Ishiki. The punch from the severed limb is extremely powerful, sending the villain flying and destroying the entire area with its impact. When they reach the hall, Seiya orders the clones to serve as a barrier for him. Shin finds it pathetic that he's being protected by the very dolls he used so much. Seiya retorts, saying it doesn't matter how he uses them. After all, they are his. Ending the conversation, he orders the girls to attack Shin. The hero dodges the blows, seeing his original sister in each of them, which only enrages him further. Just as his sister Minori tries to warn him of the incoming attacks, she is struck from behind. When his sister is hit, Shin gets distracted, and the clones restrain him. Desperate, he screams for them to let him go, watching as his sister is attacked at the same time. At that moment, Shin takes a heavy blow from behind by Ishiki Seiya. Exultant, the villain exclaims that Shin should have been protecting his younger sister. Our protagonist apologizes for causing his sister and the clones pain, as one of them also took the blow. However, clone number 3 says that this is her function. Butting into the conversation, Ishiki says her only function is to obey him. He gets angry at Shin's glare and starts to attack him, but the protagonist dodges every blow. When the hero gets to a strategic high point, Seiya threatens to eliminate one of Minori's clones. Just as he delivers the cut that was meant for the girl, Shin jumps in front and takes the blow. Continuing his assault, the villain asks if he isn't going to fight back. If he does, he will torture his sister in his place. Seiya grabs his greatsword and uses the devastating wind strike, cutting him to pieces. On the ground, grievously wounded and in pieces, Seiya says he will make him watch everything he's going to do to his sister. After kicking him, the boy gets up very quickly, regenerating. Ishiki calls him a useless undead, but Shin positions himself to protect all the clones. The girls question why he protects them, and Shin replies that he does it because he wants to protect his sister. Seiya says they are just dolls made with Byakuren's technology and not his real sister. Calling them slaves, he orders them to eliminate him immediately. Desperate, Seiya shouts for them to obey his orders. They, however, seem to understand what is happening now, and no one responds. Now the clones begin to understand their origin and the reason Shin protects them so fiercely. They all realize who the real enemy is and begin to surround the villain from Byakuren. They turn against Seiya for having harmed their brother, and the villain despairs at their revolt. Upon understanding their nature as clones of Kiryu Minori, they realize they are living beings and part of the same entity, sharing a deep connection with the original. Because of this, the memories the original Minori experienced began to surface in the clones' minds, revealing scenes where their older brother Shin desperately tried to protect them. Shin understands that her physical manipulation ability allows the user to control parts of themselves that have been separated. Without realizing it, Minori had shared her experiences with the clones who possessed the same genes as her. Completely losing his mind, Seiya screams, ordering the dolls to obey him, for he is their master. They were supposed to follow his orders, but now, anyone who tries to hurt their brother becomes an enemy. Ishiki threatens to cut everyone there to pieces with his sword, however, Shin doesn't allow it and lands another massive punch on the villain. As he falls to the ground, Seiya is attacked by a Minori clone wielding a spear. Fallen and defeated, the villain is confronted by Shin, who asks how he should finish him. As had already been established, the original Minori wishes to do it personally. She wouldn't be satisfied unless she got her revenge with her own hands. While the clones immobilize Ishiki's arms and legs, he begs them to stop. Minori then summons a giant hammer and uses the immense weapon to strike him, but a single impact is not enough to satisfy her fury. Kiryu Minori is determined to leave him in pieces before his voice fades completely. Clone number 10 interrupts the moment to report that they all suffered unimaginable pain. Just as dozens of them were struck down by Seiya, she demands that he feel the same, wishing to see Ishiki suffer even more. Shin understands the pain and abuse they went through by being repeatedly eliminated. It was a true hell on Earth. It is revealed that in the mansion's basement, a dungeon creature is kept alive and drugged to violate any living being, including men, as happened with a hunter who previously opposed Seiya. They all agree to use this cruel method for the final revenge. Minori and Shin accompany number 10 to the basement, where they chain the villain with iron shackles. Desperate, Ishiki watches as the cell is opened. The gigantic creature, an Emperor Oak, emerges before the false hero, who cries in panic. It is said that a single specimen of this species possesses the power to create an entire country. Originally, the creature was only interested in women, but due to Byakuran's drugs and modifications, it began to attack men without distinction. Minori is disgusted by the scene, and Shin prefers to look away. The moment the creature tears Ishiki's clothes and licks its lips, the curtains fall, ending the disturbing sight. Minori and her brother are visibly shaken and exhausted, wishing only to rest. The clones offer to prepare tea, thanking Shin for saving them and for not eliminating any of them during the battle. Number 10 expresses deep gratitude, not knowing how to repay their original brother. He accepts their thanks and asks them to show him around the mansion, as he needs to gather food and information about the Byakuran Guild. While number 3 guides him, number 10 decides to remain there until the torture is over. During their conversation, the girl confesses she doesn't know what to do in the future, as she was created without choices and fears the world won't accept them. Shin comforts her, stating that's a lie, because he himself accepts them. He assures them they don't need to seek an immediate meaning for their birth, they just need to live. Then, number 3 promises that she will live the best she can. However, out of nowhere, she is decapitated with a precise and clean cut, eliminated right in front of her brother. Behind her, Kira Haruto appears, who hadn't seen our hero in a long time. To reach that point, the Byakuran hero had eliminated all the other clones. He faces Shin, and with a sadistic smile, says he's happy to celebrate their emotional reunion, but that he still needs to eliminate everyone present. He unleashes a precise slash with his sword, severing both of Shin's hands. Kira comments that he didn't react in time. As his severed limbs regenerate, our protagonist charges forward, throwing a punch radiating with magic, but misses when his enemy dodges. Haruto finds him much slower than he expected. Shin tries to attack repeatedly, but misses every strike. Kira says that thoughtless attacks are useless against him and demonstrates how it's done, preparing a spell. His attack destroys a large part of the mansion and hits our hero's arms. Seeing the damage he caused, Makoto calls him a monster. Kira mocks him, finding it curious for an immortal to say such a thing. With one arm destroyed, our hero tries to activate his regeneration as quickly as possible. However, he falls into despair upon realizing his ability isn't working. Kira reveals that a spell on his sword has prevented Shin's regeneration. Our hero feels fear, as Kira is different from the other members of Byakuran. He can't imagine a way to defeat him, and now only wants to ensure his sister escapes. Therefore, he doesn't care if he doesn't make it out of there alive. Shin then asks how he discovered his location. Kira explains that Ishiki's reports stopped, so he came to check on the situation and ran into Makoto. It was lucky for Kira, but unlucky for our protagonist. Haruto then asks who else is in the mansion, since the protagonist used the plural when referring to those present. The false hero knows Shin's sister is there, but has no interest in avenging his fallen comrades. In fact, he's even happy that the guild members were eliminated, as it means Shin and his companions leveled up by defeating S-rank members. This means that if Kira eliminates them now, he will gain many levels. Our hero thinks he's completely insane. Although he partly agrees, the false hero doesn't care. In an instant, he vanishes from in front of the protagonist and reappears, plunging his sword into his stomach. The blow gravely injures him, and as Shin falls, defeated, Kira gains an absurd number of levels, feeling an overwhelming euphoria. However, Shin refuses to give up. He invokes a spell that binds Kira's feet, declaring that he will still eliminate him. Using the sacred dome of the sanctuary, Kira repels our hero, sending him flying and declaring that he will not be defeated. At his current level, the protagonist can't even touch him and continues to take blow after blow, losing his vital fluid. His regeneration can't keep up against Kira's absolute power. The enemy then offers Shin a chance. If he surrenders and goes quietly, he will leave his sister in peace. But if he resists, he will capture him first and then the girl. Shin asks if he's lying, and Haruto replies that it all depends on the protagonist's actions. In a total panic, Shin kneels before the enemy and asks him to take only him. He begs him to spare his sister, and Kira laughs, mocking his lack of dignity and pride. But in truth, Kira was lying and planned to eliminate them both. Filled with rage, our hero screams and tries to punch Kira, who dodges backward. At that moment, all the remaining clones and the original Minori appear to protect their brother. Haruto notes that Shin took good care of them and that there are still some left. When Minori appears, the protagonist yells for them to stop, as they are no match for him. The clones begin to be destroyed one by one, but they say that even if they can't win the fight, they can buy time for the two of them to escape. As Haruto advances on Shin, they sacrifice themselves to repay him for saving them from the hell they lived in. Using an instant teleportation spell, one of the clones managed to get the two siblings out of there, safe and sound. Kira misses his attack, and realizes that a spell of that level would require an immense amount of mana. Seeing the caster collapsed on the ground, he considers the situation problematic. However, he knew that even if all the clones attacked him at once, they wouldn't stand a chance of defeating him. Suddenly, one of them rips her own blouse, revealing a final trick related to her original function. After all, Ishiki had planned to use them repeatedly and then discard them. Clone number 10 activates a magical biological bomb, releasing the soul energy condensed in a crystal lodged in her chest. With their last strength, they thank Shin and Minori before detonating themselves, blowing up the entire mansion with overwhelming power. Sagiri Aya was considered the most beautiful woman in the Byakuren Guild. With her stunning looks, gentle demeanor, and impartial attitude, everyone fell in love with her. However, only those unfortunate enough to spend time alone with her discovered the terrible secret she hid, like a certain man who caught her bathing in vital fluid and witnessed her true face. 6 months ago, she descended into the secret bunker in the guild's basement. Upon entering the room where the siblings were imprisoned, she checked how much fluid had already been collected. Noticing the progress was only halfway, she decided to speed up the extraction rate. When the machine stopped, she went to the panel herself and turned it back on. The helpless siblings saw a giant fan materialize right below them. The blades began to spin at a dizzying speed, and the two panicked as they were slowly ground up. As she watched the scene, the mage Aya cackled sadistically. Although that method didn't help her level up, it was of no importance to her. As long as she could get their tomato sauce to indulge in, that was enough. She had always imagined immortals would look like zombies, never that they would have such soft skin. No matter how much they were tortured, their skin always regenerated, becoming as smooth as a newborn's. This was a woman's greatest dream, eternal youth. With everlasting beauty and youth, men and money would come to her without any effort. She felt a deep envy for the siblings for being born with this ability. Just by drinking their vital fluid, she could maintain her youth and radiant skin forever. She had found the formula for eternal youth and wanted even more of that precious blood for herself. Kira, the guild leader, watched everything with a proud expression. Back in the present, when the guild leader arrives at the scene, he no longer finds the siblings. He immediately wonders if the two managed to escape. Kira then calls Aya, feigning sympathy, but the mage is furious. She asks, her voice laced with anger, where the siblings are and why he hasn't captured them yet. Kira informs her that they eliminated Seiya and escaped again, but Aya couldn't care less. She just wants him to capture them as soon as possible. Kira doesn't understand the rush. After all, they still have plenty of blood in stock. She, however, argues that the blood needs to be fresh to be more effective, as without a constant supply, her beauty and youth would fade away. Kira says he doesn't care about her youth and complains that she's yelling too much. Aya calls him useless and orders him to stop messing around and find the fugitives immediately. Kira's expression darkens. He asks since when she became so important as to give him orders and tells her to capture them herself, since she desires their blood so much. Kira further provokes her, saying that if she stays so stressed, she'll end up with wrinkles. The comment enrages her even more. Igniting the entire area around her with her rage, the mage decides she will search for the two of them personally. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Haruto wakes up and asks his sister where they are. She explains that the clones blew everything up near the gate and that somehow they ended up in a dungeon. Startled, the protagonist asks about the others, and Minori's face takes on a sad expression. Our hero is devastated for not being able to save them, breaking the promise he had made to them. Seeing the sadness and frustration on his face, Minori hugs him tightly, assuring him that they all would have understood, as he fought bravely for her well-being. Haruto blames himself for not saving everyone, feeling a strong desire to make up for his mistakes. Through Minori, the clone's feelings reached him, and Haruto understood that in the end, they all chose to stay by her side. Crying, Minori affirms that she and all the clones received his final message. Their request for him to live on for all of them moved him deeply, but now he feels weak and yearns to become stronger. His sister shares the same sentiment and, squeezing his hand tightly, reaffirms their pact to grow stronger together. While he was unconscious, Byakuren made a new announcement about the two of them. Minori, who initially thought it was news of Haruto's death, reveals it was something much worse. The bounty on their heads has been increased to 5 billion per person. Hunters from all over are after them. They need to leave the dungeon immediately, as their pursuers can track them through the teleportation points. Following a winding path, they finally find the exit, marked by an intense light. However, Haruto steps in front of Minori, telling her to stop. Right at the exit, a monstrous eye appears, covering the entire opening. Then, its entire body is revealed, a giant, terrifying dragon. Minori shouts to her brother, saying they should run back into the dungeon, but he wants to do the exact opposite. At that moment, the dragon unleashes a destructive breath of fire that hurls the two of them away. After the heavy impact, the creature begins to fly over the area. They realize it's a high-rank monster, something that shouldn't be outside a dungeon. They don't understand why the dragon is there, but they know they don't stand a chance of fighting it. The siblings begin to dodge its intense blasts of fire. As they run, they spot a city and think they're safe, since dragons don't normally attack human settlements. But to their horror, the creature unleashes a blast of fire that destroys a large part of the city. Its breath exceeds 3,000 degrees, a temperature capable of melting anything in its path. Its scales, capable of repelling even cannon fire, make it practically indestructible. Only the combined forces of several powerful guilds would make fighting a dragon a viable option. Faced with such a monstrosity, the siblings wonder how they could possibly escape. Then, Shin proposes a risky idea to attack the monster. Minori thinks he's gone insane. However, the protagonist claims they will defeat the dragon and level up. He reminds Minori of the promise they made, arguing that if they run now, they will never be able to defeat Kira. Shin advances on the left, while Minori circles the dragon on the right. The creature unleashes a breath of fire, and our hero looks for an opening to attack. He puts on his mask, activates a magical enchantment spell, and charges at the dragon. Shin attacks the dragon from above, initiating a balanced aerial combat. A dragon is a living creature, which means the main target should be its head. He lands a powerful punch on the creature's head, causing it to lose its balance and stagger. His hand is covered in the monster's fluid, and he feels a sharp pain as the dragon's scales are extremely hard. Minori realizes she needs to aim for the gaps between the scales and moves in to attack. She thrusts her dagger into these gaps, but the dragon barely reacts and attacks her with its tail. After knocking the girl away, the creature turns to Shin and prepares another breath of fire. The blast hits Shin head on, but his sister soon appears to defend him. Ignoring their attacks, the monster unleashes a macabre red breath, which Minori tries to defend with a spell. Even with her magic shield, she is hit by the blast, and her hand is severely injured. The black flames, which consume magic on their own, continue to burn her. Feeling excruciating pain, she remembers the clones who died and uses that memory as fuel. Determined to become stronger, she rips off her own arm to stop the pain and the spread of the flames. She faces the dragon head-on as her brother gets up, declaring that the fight isn't over yet. This is the first time his bones have been completely melted. He expected something like this from a dragon's breath. Now recovered, he coldly rips off his own hand, imbues it with a spell, and hurls it at the monster. The hand, shrouded in magic, strikes the creature with full force, which for the first time shows a clear reaction of pain. Seeing the opportunity, Shin yells for his sister to act, and she immediately charges the monster. The girl feels she needs even stronger magic and screams as she attacks the dragon. Minori unleashes the infernal black flame magic with all her might against the target. The dragon screams in pain and begins to weaken. Immediately after, the protagonist appears in front of it and forms his severed limbs into a single weapon. Compressing all his strength into a single point, the unified strike pierces the dragon's scales. He then strikes the monster's head with a massive blow, and it reacts with a final scream. The attack drives the beast into the ground, finishing it off completely, and the protagonist gains several levels from the victory. The two siblings are satisfied, having defeated the creature. Minori feels that her abilities have awakened after the confrontation with the dragon's flames. As they calm down, they wonder why a dragon was there, since they didn't see it when they passed through the area before. Our hero deduces that someone was controlling it because of the purple glow in its eyes. It was the same glow that appeared when they were hypnotized during their torture. To be able to control something so insane with hypnosis magic, it could only be the mage Aya. As soon as he says her name, several dragons begin to fly over the island. On top of one of them are two well-dressed people armed with swords. They jump down, and the protagonist suspects they are also being controlled as they immediately charge at him and Minori. One of them throws his sword at the girl, who dodges by rolling on the ground. Enraged, the protagonist throws a punch that sends the attacker flying. Immediately after, a huge dragon appears, preparing a terrifying breath attack. When it unleashes the attack, it destroys the surroundings, and the protagonist notices the explosion hit a much larger area than the previous dragons. This means they've already discovered their position, and more enemies are appearing. Shin decides to handle the dragon and asks Minori to deal with the hunters, who also seem to be under hypnotic control. Seeing their strength, Shin tells her to fall back, realizing he almost put her in a dangerous situation. He says he'll handle everything himself, but Minori is afraid to let her older brother do it. Remembering what happened at the mansion against Seiya, she gets an idea. She tells her brother she can't let him handle everything alone anymore. After all, this is their revenge. United, they charge at the hunters, casting their spells. Casting fire spells, Minori defeats 3 of them at once. As the dragon prepares an ice breath, Shin charges forward and is hit head-on. With half of his body torn off, he uses body manipulation to attack with the severed part. However, the dragon bites his legs and stops the attack. Cleverly, Shin uses a poison infusion, causing the creature to feel excruciating pain and fall defeated, which grants him many levels. The hunters attack Minori relentlessly, but she dodges every blow. Seeing more enemies appearing from above, she is forced to conjure her magic shield to protect herself until she is stabbed in the back. Realizing there are too many targets, she decides not to hold back and uses Black Flame Expansion, hitting several enemies at once. She warns her brother that they must end this quickly to avoid permanent damage. Even with the black fire burning them, the hunters get back up. The hypnosis magic forces absolute obedience, keeping them on their feet despite their severe injuries. Suddenly, all the controlled monsters and hunters begin to retreat. They fall into line, as do the dragons, waiting for Sagiri Aya to emerge from a portal. The siblings notice that Kira didn't come with her. Arrogantly, the woman seems to think she can handle them alone. She reveals that she shares the 5 senses with the hypnotized, and that's how she found them on the island. He comments that she was brave to come to them without Kira Haruto. She replies that she doesn't need him to face 2 opponents she considers weak. Minori conjures her black flames and states that pride goes before a fall. She attacks the mage, who completely dispels the spell and remains without a single scratch. The mage used a shield of living beings to protect herself from the attack. This enrages Minori, who cries because Aya doesn't value human life. When one of the hunters falls to the ground, defeated, the mage says that human life is meaningless to her. As long as she is beautiful and strong, that's all that matters. The rest is disposable. Minori believes there is no hierarchy in life, but the mage disagrees, stating that the 2 of them are living in an illusion and that she will disillusion them right now. Aya uses a purple lightning spell that destroys the surroundings and creates a crater between them. As Shin Makoto jumps to save his sister, Aya appears and says he should be more worried about himself. She uses hypnotic temptation and kisses him on the lips. Shin Makoto's eyes turn purple, controlled by Aya's spell, and his sister is terrified. The mage says he is lucky, as he won't have to do anything and will preserve his youth forever. Minori is furious that she is hypnotizing her brother and charges at the mage. She lunges with her dagger, but her own brother steps in front, taking the blow. The mage tries to get into her head, saying how terrible it is to stab her own brother. Just as Minori tries to attack again, Aya makes her brother counterattack with a massive punch. Minori dodges and shouts, trying to wake him from the trance. She begs him to recognize her, but Aya says it's useless, as her hypnosis can only be broken by her unless Minori can overpower it with a stronger spell or eliminate the caster. Controlling Shin, Aya orders him to attack Minori, and the boy begins to throw kicks. After kicking her away, he advances and prepares another punch, which hits her squarely. Aya knows that Minori feels terrible about being beaten by her beloved brother, who is much stronger. Minori grabs her dagger and decides to fight back to avoid being eliminated. Looking at her brother, she has a vision of moments when he was kind to her. This distracts her, causing her to take a powerful hit. Lying on the ground, disarmed, she felt weak, thinking she couldn't fight Shin. He then choked her, lifting her off the ground and making her feel powerless. She began to see visions of her brother protecting her in the past, and remembered the promise they made to become strong together. Still conscious, Minori started to murmur something. Then, consumed by hatred, she screamed with all her might that she would eliminate the witch. Aya ordered Shin Makoto to tear his sister to pieces, but it was Minori who reacted first, severing his limbs. She apologized to her older brother as she dodged his attack, attacks, and immediately after, she cast the explosive black flames magic, which covered a vast area. Aya escaped through a portal, avoiding the attack. Minori had always thought that as long as she was behind her brother, everything would be fine, but that was no longer enough. For her own survival, she attacked him coldly, tearing off his arms and, finally, his head. However, Shin continued to fight even without his head, landing a punch on his sister. She could feel the emotions and apologies in his blows. It was Minori who should have been apologizing. After all, she had been weak and had always dragged him down, but that was about to change. Now she would have the strength to protect her brother too. As she fought, she leveled up and finally gave him a hug. During the embrace, she declared that she would become strong, and then exploded with magic, taking Shin Makoto with her. After the sacrificial attack, Aya tried to collect the blood of the two siblings. She wanted to recover them as quickly as possible, and grew irritated with the dense smoke that prevented her from seeing them. From within the smoke, Minori's voice emerged, saying that Aya had underestimated her by thinking she wouldn't be able to fight Shin. But on the day they escaped from hell, they had eliminated each other several times. An absurd amount of magical power emanated from the girl, and she said that she had made up her mind a long time ago. Shin Makoto thanked his sister for snapping him out of the hypnosis, and now they would fight together. Aya realized the explosion had broken her spell and prepared to try and hypnotize him again. Aya raised all the hunters and dragons again, ordering them to attack the two siblings. Minori, now stronger, used her dagger to defend against a sword attack. Her brother finished off the hunter, but immediately after, a dragon nearly burned him to a crisp. However, that was when Kiryu Minori saved him, creating a protection spell. Then, she used her black flames to take down the monster. The mage raised all the corpses once more, and declared that it was useless to fight her, stating that they would keep moving until their hearts stopped for good. He knew that if they didn't eliminate them properly, they would just keep coming back to life. The two siblings continued to face the hypnotized, who now acted like zombies. Even after taking a severe beating, one of them remained standing, even without its jaw. His sister pointed out that their movements weren't powered by magic and told him to just knock them down. He understood and began to attack them, imbuing his fists with magic. In the midst of combat, an enraged dragon flew towards him. With Aya mounted on its back, the dragon stomped on the hero, pinning him to the ground. Seizing the opportunity, she tried to hypnotize him again with her spell, claiming that no one escapes her hypnosis. Aya began to laugh, assuming his stamina and magic must be at their limit from the battle. Confident that he would easily fall for the spell, she ordered him to eliminate Minori. Suddenly he knelt and prepared a magic-infused strike. Aya urged him to follow the order, but shattering her expectations, he delivered a massive punch to the villain's chin. Lying on the ground, she was in shock, realizing her hypnosis no longer worked. The two siblings were now at a higher level, and her magic no longer affected them. With her teeth broken, Aya found it impossible that he had overcome her hypnosis. In a fury, she began to cast various destructive spells to finish them off. Minori created a shield and defended against all the attacks, claiming that the two of them were immortal. Aya grew even more furious and conjured even stronger spells, unleashing flurries of meteors of various magical elements against the siblings. The spells didn't work. Kiryu Minori defended against everything, and then used the black line spell. Even with the witch creating a shield, the blast of black magic began to break through her defense. She found it absurd that her magic was losing. The girl's spell hit her, burning her skin. Aya began to burn and scream in pain, a pain Minori had experienced many times before. Because of Minori's magic, the suffering the siblings had endured was nothing compared to the pain Aya felt now. The younger sister wanted her to feel it, and to do so, she used her enemy's own hypnosis spell against her, condemning her to live in an eternal hell. After some time, Aya woke up, tied inside the same capsule where the two siblings had been tortured. Recognizing the place, she became desperate and screamed for them to get her out. Even in chains, she demanded they give her the treasure, and then tried to use a lightning spell, a meteor spell, a water spell, a cutting wind spell, and every other one she knew. She wondered why her spells weren't working. When she saw the protagonist, she called for his attention, asking if he was listening. Seeing him working on the computer, she despaired, asking what he was going to do. Then he presses the red button. The propeller beneath her whirs to life, pulling the witch down into it. In moments, she begins to be shredded, screaming in agony from the intense pain. Her limbs are torn from her body, but then she suddenly wakes up, feeling it was all a dream. She realizes she is in the same place place again and that the pain was real. Aya begins to plead for her life, and the protagonist points to a scoreboard displaying a number. She understands. That's the number of times the siblings were shredded by the same torture. She realizes she will be tortured the exact same number of times. The protagonist presses the button again, and the witch cries out in pain. Finally, she wakes up, realizing she endured the same amount of torture as they did. Aya believes that now she will be allowed to return to the real world, free from the pain. She intended the moment she returned to deal with the siblings and finish them off. However, the count resets and starts over, plunging her into despair. She thought it was finally over, but the button is pressed and she suffers again. Screaming, she can't believe she has to go through it all over again. Meanwhile, the siblings notice the witch's body becoming dry and wrinkled. They realize this was Aya Sagiri's true form. They understand she had been using magic to feign youth, as she was actually over 100 years old. The protagonist explains that she lived for about 150 years. When the tribe of immortals appeared, she discovered that by drinking their vital fluid, she could preserve her youth. That was why she became obsessed with the siblings and with eternal youth. Even after suffering the same tortures as them, she still clung to her life. Shin, his brother, believes that if they leave her there, she will die of old age. The hero decides not to finish her off and turns to leave, until his sister notices something shining in the distance. She finds a medallion and realizes it's what the witch used to control parents and children through hypnosis. Determined, she decides she needs to end this cycle of suffering as quickly as possible. The witch wonders if hours or days have passed, aware that her death is near. Suddenly, Haruto arrives, having sensed her presence, and finds her on her deathbed. Aya begs him to finish her off, as she won't last much longer. Kira, however, refuses and leaves, leaving her to suffer and denying her final request. Thus, she will rot slowly, her appearance deteriorating to reflect the hundreds of years she truly possesses. Kira, in turn, senses the siblings' presence and vows that he will not let them escape again. Far away, the siblings decide to take a break and light a campfire in the forest. The two talk about how far they have come on their mission. A lot has happened to get them here. With each challenge, they leveled up and grew stronger. However, they also ended the lives of many people who had nothing to do with their revenge and sacrificed their clone sisters, a fact that weighs on Minori's conscience. It will all be over soon. The final step is to defeat the greatest enemy of all, Kira Haruto. Once they eliminate him, their revenge will be complete. They plan to get a proper rest before taking the next step. Suddenly, Shin hears a noise and yells for his sister to run. The two of them leap aside, dodging an explosive strike that hits the very spot where they were standing. Haruto appears, satisfied to have finally found them. With his sword in hand, he exclaims that he has found them. The siblings try to flee. Minori thinks it's their chance since they outnumber him, but Shin disagrees. He knows they are exhausted from the fight against Aya, and that if they don't escape now, they will be captured. However, Kira charges at them with a swift lunge. The protagonist meets him with a counterattack, telling him he was the last person he wanted to see right now. Haruto doesn't like the sound of that and retorts that they have a long history together. He says he was just planning to play with the little sister, but he's changed his mind. Now he's going to erase his younger sister. His sword transforms, sprouting eyes and growing in size. He was annoyed that she escaped from Seiya's mansion, and to vent his anger, he's decided he needs to eliminate her. With a maniacal expression, Kira declares that because she angered him, he will erase her very existence. Filled with rage, Shin Makoto lunges at him, fury coursing through his veins. He throws a punch, but Haruto dodges it effortlessly. Next, Minori attacks with her dagger. The villain parries both blows, but Shin strikes again. The hero notices that their combined attack was effective against Kira. Minori imbues her dagger with powerful magic and unleashes a slash toward her target. As he dodges, the protagonist appears behind him with a charged punch. Kira dodges again. Seeing the situation is becoming dangerous, casts a spell. His sword is imbued with energy, showing that he too is a great threat. Shin starts running to escape the sword's attacks, but ends up losing an arm. He tries to regenerate the lost limb as quickly as possible, but notices his regeneration isn't working. His vital fluid begins to drain and he feels excruciating pain. His body won't move either. As Minori runs to help her brother, she's struck from behind, a powerful kick that sends her flying, crashing through the trees in her path. Kira reveals that he wields the sword that banishes immortals, as the wounds it inflicts never regenerate. Unlike all the toys he used before, This weapon can truly eliminate them. Kiryu Shin falls into despair and screams, but Kira remains calm and raises his sword, delivering an abrupt slash to end his life. His blow hits its mark, and a spray of blood erupts. Kira smiles, thinking he has won. However, he has cut down Minori, who threw herself in front of her brother to protect him. In an instant, her body is completely destroyed, leaving Shin in absolute shock. He begins to cry, holding what's left of Minori in his arms. Her last words are his name. In desperation, he tries to cast a spell to save her, but nothing happens. He screams, completely distraught, for his sister to wake up, refusing to believe this is the end. Her last words are to tell him she loves him, and then Kira finishes her off for good. This leaves Makoto unable to react. Haruto, for his part, comments that he hates emotional family moments. He knew that if he tried to eliminate Makoto, his sister would come to protect him. Family bonds are useful, as Haruto had anticipated their exact actions. Makoto looks at his sister's head, separated from her body, and can barely even cry. A distant memory from the time they were free comes to his mind. He remembers her making food for him, and the two of them eating happily. Minori would hang the clothes on the line and declare it was going to be a great day. He would tell her it was time for school, and they would go together. She mentioned that Yoshida had invited her to the aquarium, and Makoto found it strange, as he thought she hated aquariums. In truth, she didn't want to go out with Yoshida because it had been a while since she'd spent time with her own brother. Makoto had been busy with his part-time job, so he invited Minori to go to the aquarium together. She accepted, and they made that promise. The memory shifts. As they were walking through the village, they came face to face with Haruto Kira. He asked if they were Kiryu Makoto and Kiryu Minori. Startled, they confirmed. Haruto stated that he had been looking for them for a long time and had finally found them. Immediately after, he drew his sword and said he came for them because of their bodies. With a single slash, he cut Makoto in half right in front of his sister. The girl burst into desperate tears, but within moments her brother's body regenerated. Haruto found the regeneration ability incredible. Makoto himself didn't know he possessed such a skill. This confirmed what his informant had told him. They were immortal. He then unleashed another strike, eliminating them both by tearing off their heads. Seeing that they regenerated infinitely, no matter how many times they were eliminated, he was amazed. He never imagined such monsters existed, the descendants of immortals. The siblings, for their part, had no idea of their true origin. He quickly killed them again and subjugated them, stepping on their heads. From that moment on, they became his food, and the torture began, never stopping. They were eliminated hundreds of times by Haruto Kira's sword, who promised to make good use of their bodies. Back in the present, Makoto cries convulsively, watching his sister be eliminated forever. He enters a berserk mode, screaming with overwhelming fury. An immense red energy emanates from his body after the scream, and a macabre aura surrounds him. The transformation leaves Haruto impressed, and even a little frightened by his monstrous presence. He is shocked to see Makoto's new form, a bestial figure with horns. Makoto attacks him, letting out a monstrous roar and gathering an unprecedented amount of magical power. His roar makes the ground tremble and creates a powerful gust of wind that sends Haruto flying. He uses a spell on his sister, striving to bring her back to life. Her body is healed, and Haruto doesn't understand, as he was certain the sword would eliminate her for good. He wonders what kind of ability that was, and what sort of bodily transformation this is. Seeing Makoto's species evolution, Haruto shows a certain apprehension. This was an unprecedented event, and he didn't know what trick had been used. However, now, his target was the brother. Kira intends to eliminate Kiryu Makoto once and for all, and charges forward with everything he has. The moment he strikes, Makoto disappears along with his sister and reappears behind him. He gently places Minori's body on the ground. Haruto assumes that somehow Makoto has learned how to fight. In his bestial form, the hero charges, trying to tear him apart with his claws. Kira dodges, and they begin a clash of strength and speed, trying to hit one another. Haruto is indignant that he reached such a level of power just from his sister's death, while he himself had to eliminate Makoto hundreds, perhaps thousands of times to level up. Makoto lets out a piercing shriek and charges again. Kira refuses to accept his current state. Another clash of strength occurs between them, and at first, neither can land a hit. However, Makoto soon throws Kira far away, making him feel pain for the first time in a long while. He admits that Kiryu is the first person to cause him so much damage at once, but there was no point in getting arrogant. After all, he was just a descendant of an immortal and couldn't possibly defeat him. Haruto smiles at the monster Makoto has become, who barely reacts to the insults. Then, calm, they both take a deep breath and engage in another sequence of relentless attacks and dodges. Makoto charges up a black lightning spell and launches it at Kira. Haruto dodges and grows increasingly furious with the situation. He uses his sword to try and eliminate the enemy for good, and Makoto takes a cut to the shoulder. The attack nearly splits his body in two, and Haruto wants to ensure he dies. He leaps, attempting a downward strike to drive the sword into his body. However, the protagonist has already recovered and creates a magical barrier. Besides blocking the attack, he jumps and strikes Kira, using his energy to knock him to the ground. With Haruto down, Makoto walks slowly toward him. Kira can't believe he's about to die and refuses to let his end be like this. Meanwhile, Minori awakens, even after being struck down by the sword that nullifies regeneration. She sees her brother recoil in fear, as Haruto also awakens a semi-demonic form and is shocked to see him. She thought she had been cut in half by the sword strike and wonders what is happening and if that monstrous creature is really her brother. Then, Haruto, in his true form, states that he thought he would never show it to anyone. Wings sprout from his back, and he declares that the price the immortal tribe will pay will be high. Filled with hatred, he charges forward to unleash a brutal attack. He and Makoto clash with infernal strength, emanating an immense amount of energy. His sister watches the two fight in the sky with overwhelming intensity, utterly astonished. Kira attacks with a demonic expression on his face, trying to use his sword against the protagonist. Makoto, however, catches the blade with his bare hands and charges a magical blast that he fires from his mouth. The attack hits Haruto squarely, blasting him off the ground and causing immense pain. However, he withstands it and unleashes a sword strike that slams the protagonist into the ground. He charges again and sends him flying with another slash. Makoto skids to a halt on the ground and then lunges at the enemy, letting out a guttural scream. He bites the neck of the Byakuran's leader, who feels a sharp pain. However, Haruto takes advantage of the situation to cut off Kiryu Makoto's head. He believes that with his neck severed by that sword, it would be impossible for Makoto to regenerate. He asks if the immortal is finally feeling the true sensation of death. Laughing outrageously, he suddenly stops when he sees a magic circle forming from Makoto's body. Makoto's head quickly reattaches to his neck, and Haruto notices the spell's geometric pattern. He sees that the circle is shaped like a clock, and realizes Makoto used a spell to turn back time. The reversal of Makoto's and his sister's deaths leaves Kira completely terrified. Laughing, he deems it impossible for the immortal to use that technique multiple times. Kira draws his sword and unleashes the same strike that once eliminated the demon king of hell, determined to end the duel. Makoto, in turn, charges a spell to counter the attack, imbuing his own sword with a purple energy. The two unleash their strongest attacks, each attempting to erase the other's existence. With superior strength, Kira overpowers Makoto's attack, believing he has won. His sword cuts through the hero's overwhelming power, who seems to have lost the clash. However, it is at this exact moment that Minori appears. Using her magic, she places her hands on her brother's back and shouts for him to win. When Makoto feels Minori's touch, everything changes. He thanks her, receiving a new wave of power to finally carry out their revenge. Kira yells that he has eliminated them hundreds of times before, and that this is nothing, claiming that the siblings' destiny was always to be destroyed by him. Minori replies that if their destiny is to be revived over and over, then that very destiny is about to change, because now they will erase him from existence. At that moment, Makoto unleashes a magical blast of overwhelming power. The destructive blow, like a nuclear bomb, strikes the guild leader head-on. A few days later, with Kira's death, the results of the investigation into the Byakuran Guild were released. All of their crimes were exposed to the public, and the truth spread. Other hunters commented on how bizarre and crazy the members of that guild were. It became clear to everyone that Kira's true nature was not that of a pure human. People sympathized with the siblings' story, but the crimes they committed in the name of revenge did not disappear. Even so, they were considered free, and now they wondered what they would do, since their goal had been achieved. Makoto and his sister discuss where to go, but can't think of anywhere. Suddenly, he stands up, remembering the promise he made about the aquarium, suggesting they could finally go there. Minori cries with emotion and immediately agrees. Now that they had all the time in the world, they wanted to talk about many things. After all, there were times they felt they would be crushed by fate, but they never gave up. Together, they decided to start a new life from scratch, as many times as it took.